Yeah, so hi guys. So in today's video, we're going to work with APIs, and the current project we do have is a dad jokes generator. So this one uses an API to fetch the dad jokes. So the API is called icon has dad jokes. So this is the API we are using, called icon has dad jokes. All right, so let me show you the demo. So currently you can see we have a text that says click the button below to get a random joke. So if I click, you can see a loading indicator, and then we should get a new joke. So you can see now the new joke is 2 peanuts while walking down the street, one was salted. So you can see we do have a loading indicator, and then I click again, you can see the loading indicator again, and then you can get the result. So they say Dodger Stadium can hold up to 56,000 people, but that is just a ballpark figure. So this is how it should work. It is fetching the API. The API that we have is this called icon has dad jokes. So this is what we are going to use, and our main focus is on the API. So API, the endpoints we care about is fetch a random joke. So you can see this is the API we are going to work with. And then without wasting time, let's get started. So let me open this new file in the browser. You're using live server extension. If you don't have, go ahead and install it. So let's get started, and we are going to start in the HTML. So what I have now is to create a div with a class of card. This one will be holding the card that we do have here. So this is the div. So let me place this one in the middle. This one is the div. This is the card. You can see the whitish color. That is the card. So inside the card, we have a h2, which says dad jokes generator. Right? So this is dad jokes generator. And then the next thing we have is a paragraph with a class of joke. And this one will hold the exact joke. So initially we'll have a text saying click the button below to get a random joke. Initially, this is what we will be having. And then after that, we have a button. So let's create a button. And inside the button, we have two elements. So we have a span. This span has the text, which is get random joke. And then the next thing we have is the loading indicator. So I'm going to use a div dot loader. So why am I getting this loader? This loader can be found in this website called CSS loaders. You can see we have so many loaders. So you just copy one of them. Like for instance, I think I'm using this one. So you just copy one of the loading indicators, and then you are going to paste it in the CSS. So I already have mine pasted. So let me show you. So let me minimize this icon. So okay, so you can see I already have the loading. So for when you copy yours, it won't have the display of none. So mine has a display of none, and that's for a reason. So let me just show you. So inside the button, we have two elements. We have the span and the loader. So if we go back to the browser and see what we have right now, we don't have much going on. So let's save this file. You can see we have the random joke, and the loader is not working. Or it is working, it is here, just that the color does not match. So the next thing, let's style the card so that we can have a nice card. So the first thing I'm going to style is the body. As always, the body has to be given some padding so that it doesn't, elements don't stay in the edges. You can see right now they are close to the edges. So, and also you might notice I have the default HTMLs, and then I have the Poppins font installed. So let's add a padding here. So 2rem, and then a background color. So I'm just going to use hash dc dfe3, and then we save that. You can see the color has changed, the padding has kicked in. The next thing we need to do is we need to display this flex, and then so that we can justify the content to the center. If you do that, you can see the content goes to the center. The next thing is that I want to grab the card. So the class is card, so we can grab it using the dot card. Then let's give it a width of 300 pixels. All right, a background color of white. You can see, then let's add a padding because you can see the elements are too close to the edges. Then give it a padding of maybe 1 rem. All right, and then you can see the edges are too sharp. Then we can add a border radius. So border radius of 5 pixels. All right, that looks nice. The next thing is that we can display flex on the card itself, so that we can be able to give some gaps between these elements, and then we can align them as we want. So we can do display flex here, and then we can say flex direction here to be column. Then let's do a gap of 10 pixels. And if you save, you can see now the text and these items are placed as expected. So the next thing we need to do here is to add a text align the center. All right, you can see now everything is positioned to the center. And then, so yeah, that's it guys for the card. And also we can align the items to the center. So let's see. Then you can align these items to the center like that. You can see now the button looks a bit nice. The next thing we saw is that this text in the middle, we also did not add the font family to the body. So let's go and add a font family. So let me come back here. So the font family is Poppins. And then as a default, we do sans serif. If you save, you can see now the font changes. So the next thing we might style is the joke itself. So we can do the dot joke. We get it by the class. The class is the joke. So we can say dot joke. And then in the joke, we can say we want it to be italics. So font style is italic. All right. And then we can give it, let's reduce its font size to something like 0.9 rem. And then we can give it a color of red. All right, finally, let's style the button. The button has 2 elements, so we can display them flex. So this is element 1, and then this one is the second element. So what we can do here is we grab the button, and then we can say, we don't even need to use the dot because we can grab it by the class since we only have 1 button. So we can say, we can start with the padding. So, and the padding we are going to work with is padding vertical is 0.3 rem, and then padding horizontal is 1 rem. You can see it looks nice now. The next thing is to display flex on it. You can see now everything is aligned side by side, and then we can give a gap here, gap of 0.2 rem. You can see the gap well. Let's remove the border. So yeah, so let's remove the border to be none. Then let's give it a background color of black and a color of white. All right, and then we denote the gap. So we did the gap, and then a cursor of pointer, we want it to be pointed, so we can say cursor pointer. So now when you hover, the cursor should be pointing. So let's see. So you can see the cursor is pointing. Right. So let me zoom in a little bit like that. So we have everything set for our HTML. And then, so our main other goal now is to, let's increase this padding vertical. Padding vertical, let's do 0.5. I think that looks nice. All right. And then we can align these items to the center. So we are done with the HTML. We are done with the CSS. Let's go to the. So the next thing I need to do here is I want to pass display none on the loading, because I'll display it block later on when I'm dealing with asynchronous JavaScript. So you can see the loading indicator is gone. So let's go to the JavaScript file. And as always, let's test whether the JavaScript file is working. So we can alert hey. You can see the hey is working. So meaning it is working. The first thing we need access to is the button. So we can say document.query selector. And then since we only have one button, we can get it by its tag name. All right. The next thing is that we need to add an event listener to the button. So we can say button.add event listener. And the event we want to listen for is the click. So let's create the handler function. So we can say function get random joke. When we say the main reason we need a function is that we need to group some data that we can reuse and we can call. So then the handler for this click event is the get random joke function. I hope you can see. And then this function will be asynchronous because it is dealing with data that is not available immediately. It is dealing with the promises. So I'm going to create yet another function that handles the fetching logic. So before I continue, I'm going to create another function, another asynchronous function, and then call it fetch joke. So this one, its duty is just to fetch the jokes. So let me show you. So what we do here, we use a try catch. I'm going to use async await. And then what we do here in the try, we try to fetch the data. We try to send a request to the backend. So this is the backend. And you can see what we are sending is that we are just sending a request to this API endpoint. And then we pass a header of accept application/JSON so that we can get the JSON back. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a response object. And then this response will be an instance of await, fetch. Then we give it that base URL, which is this one. We give it the base URL, and then here we can paste that. So what we are doing here is that we are getting the response whenever we call this fetch. We are awaiting the fetch call to this endpoint. And then remember we said that we need to pass some headers. So to pass some headers, you add a second argument, and then inside the argument you create the headers, and then we just want to accept application/JSON. All right. So this is what is happening. We are waiting. We are just storing the response from the call to this endpoint using the fetch API after we await it. So the next thing we need to check is if this response .okay, we want to see whether this response is okay. So this one is a boolean. Whenever this response is okay, this one is a boolean. So we want to check whether there is no response .okay. So the response is not okay. And then if we get this, we are going to throw a new error. I'm just going to say failed to fetch. I'm not going to add a lot of details, but we can add, let's say, failed to fetch. Then we can say exit code. And then we can add s.status. All right. So I hope you can understand what is happening. So we are creating a response. We are getting the response from the call to this endpoint. We pass some headers. And then if the response is not okay, we throw an error. This error will be caught inside this catch because we are using try and catch. And then if the response is okay, then the next thing we do here is we grab the data by awaiting res.json. So we requested for the JSON data. So to get that data, we await the response, and then we say the response, give us the JSON, because the JSON will hold our data. So I'm just going to console log the data. So, and then if you get an error, the first thing you always do is to console the error or to handle this error. But for my case, I'm just going to console log the error. And then finally, I'm going to return null. All right, so this is our logic. This is the logic we are working with. So the first thing we get the response from the call to this endpoint. And then if the response is not okay, we throw a new error that will be caught here inside the catch. And then we await the data from the response.json. And then finally, we console log this data. So now inside our function, the function now becomes easier to work with because it doesn't care about how the data is being fetched. So here, what I'm going to do is that whenever we click on that button, first let's get access to the loader. The loader has the class of loader. We need to get access to it because we need to now make sure the loader is showing. So I'm just going to say const spinner is equals to document.query selector, and then we select the dot loader. And then whenever this, we don't care about this function right now. So whenever we call the click is being handled, the first thing we need to do is to show the spinner. So we say spinner dot. So we have an issue. So spinner document dot get element dot query selector, and then let's see where the issue is. So the loading indicator, let's call it the loading indicator. And then inside here, we can say loading indicator dot style. So for some reason, we don't have access to the style. So let me get back to the spinner. I don't know why it is not giving me some autocomplete spinner. So what we need to do is now we need to show the spinner. So I'm just going to do spinner dot style dot display is equals to block. So remember, initially we were working with a display of none. So I added a display of none to the loader. Now we are showing it so that it can be seen in the UI. So all right, so after showing the spinner, then we create a joke instant. So what I'm going to do here, I'm not first going to create it. I'm just going to await fetch joke. So I want to see what is present inside this await fetch joke. So I'm going to open the inspector tool, and then we can go to the console. Then let's click get joke. And then this is the response that is coming back from the server. So whatever is coming back from the server has an ID, the joke itself, and the status. All right. So I hope you can see that it has the ID, joke, and status. So if you go back here in the fetch joke, we said that the first thing we are doing here is creating a response. We get the response from the call to this endpoint. From this response, we extract the data. Then we console log the data. This is the data you saw. The data has the ID, the joke, and the status. So what we are going to do now is when we get the JSON, we first check whether we have the joke. So we can say data.joke. If we don't have data.joke, then we throw a new error, then say invalid data. Invalid joke found. All right. So this is what I'm saying is that if we don't get the joke, because we saw that whenever we call the await the response.json, this one gives us the data we saw in the console. And the data has an ID, a joke, and a status. If there is no joke, because we only care about the joke, we throw a new error because that means something went wrong. So finally, we return data.joke. So whenever we return data.joke, this one will return us the data. So this function fetch joke returns either the joke as a text or null. And with that, let's continue. So what we do here is that when we await here, we can say const joke is equals to, we await the joke. So the joke can either be a joke string or it can be null. So inside here, what we do now is, first, after calling the backend or calling this function and awaiting the result, because this is an asynchronous function, doesn't happen immediately. So what we do now is make sure we toggle back. We hide now the loading indicator because the call to the backend is finished now. We started the call with a loading indicator and then we called and we got a response back, and then we show the spinner back again. So what we do here is that this joke can be a joke string or null, because you saw in the catch block, we are capturing we are returning null here, which means it can either be a joke or null. So we still need to check if not joke. If we don't have a joke, then we can alert and say failed to fetch joke. All right. And then make sure you return so that it doesn't continue running the rest of the code. So if we don't have a joke, that means something went wrong during our fetching and we returned null. Then we alert the user. Finally, we have the joke. Then let's update the joke paragraph. So let's go back here and say, this is the joke we want to update. It has a class of joke. So we can grab it on top here and say const joke paragraph is equals to document dot query selector, and then we select the dot joke. You saw that this is the class that was assigned to that joke. So, and then finally, we just update its text content, and then we say joke paragraph dot text content is equals to the new joke. And then that's it, guys. Let's test this out. So if I click, you can see the loading indicator, and then we get the joke. So without geometry, life is pointless. Click again, get a joke. I have got this disease where I can't stop making airport puns. The doctor says it's terminal. We do that. We can fetch as many jokes as we'd like, and this is the required outcome of this project. So make sure you like, guys, share with your friends, and comment down what you think about such a tutorial. And let me see you back soon.